Welcome to the Tip Sheet, a daily political analysis of the 2018 elections, based on interviews with Republican and Democratic officials, pollsters, strategists and voters. Where things stand: think the 2018 campaign will be over after all the ballots from Tuesday are counted. Think again. Some Republican officials now believe that the Georgia governor's race is destined to go to a December 4th runoff because neither Stacey Abrams, the Democrat, nor Brian Kemp, the Republican, is likely to capture a majority of the vote. The race is that close in their private polling, and, while Mr. Kemp enjoys a slight advantage in the GOP surveys, the Libertarian on the ballot, Ted Metz, could take about 2% of the vote. In Georgia's 2014 gubernatorial race, the Libertarian nominee earned 2.36% of the vote. That could keep either major candidate from reaching 50% on Election Day if the race remains neck and neck. The furor over the new inquiry by Mr. Kemp's office of the Georgia Democratic Party threw a curveball into the final days of this tight race. With Election Day looming, Trump advisors spent the weekend preparing the president for Republican losses this week and what that could mean for his agenda in the House. Two New York Times Upshot/Siena College polls wrapped up Sunday night on bellwether races that we'll be watching on Tuesday, and they are close. In Kentucky, where polls will close at 6 p.m. Eastern, Representative Andy Barr, a Republican, and Amy McGrath, the Democratic nominee, are tied at 44%. In Virginia, where polls will close at 7 p.m., Representative Dave Bratt, a Republican, is narrowly ahead of his Democratic challenger, Abigail Spanberger. The poll had a margin of sampling error of plus or minus 4.6 percentage points. In Representative Steve King's run for re-election in Iowa, a Times Upshot/Siena poll completed Sunday found that Mr. King had a 5-point lead over the Democrat, J.D. Scholten. The margin of sampling error was plus or minus 5 points, however. Mr. King has usually cruised to re-election, but his history of racist remarks, a recent interview to a publication associated with neo-Nazis and a rebuke from a Republican Party leader have complicated his race. Advisors to Mr. Scholten tell us they are preparing for a recount if the vote is razor thin. They have also cut a final digital ad with Mr. Scholten saying it was time for new leadership in both parties, calling to replace Nancy Pelosi and Paul Ryan. 2 months of Times Upshot/Siena College polling concluded Sunday night, 96 polls in all, an extraordinary and fascinating undertaking. Check them all out here. A HT to Amanda Cox, Nate Cohn and our colleagues at the Upshot. On the Senate side, the Trafalgar Group, a Republican firm, has a new poll out on the Arizona Senate race that shows the Democratic nominee, Kyrsten Sinema, slightly ahead of the GOP candidate, Martha Mazzoli. For more details about where things stand in the campaign for Congress, our election outlook for the Senate is here and for the House is here. Trump's Monday: the president has 3 campaign rallies scheduled, 3 p.m. in Cleveland with the Republican nominee for governor of Ohio, Mike DeWine. 6:30 p.m. in Fort Wayne, Indiana, with the Republican nominee for Senate in Indiana, Mike Braun. 10 p.m. in Cape Girardeau, Missouri, with the Republican nominee for Senate in Missouri, Josh Hawley. Back in New York, if Claudia Tenney is not the Trump family's favorite member of Congress, she's high on the list. On Monday, Donald Trump Jr. and Kimberly Guilfoyle will headline a rally for the upstate Republican. He is the 4th member of his family to appear in Ms. Tenney's district in recent months following President Trump, Ivanka Trump, and Eric Trump. A Times Upshot/Siena poll completed Sunday showed that Ms. Tenney and the Democratic nominee, Anthony Brindisi, are running virtually even. Turnout in Florida: image about 30,000 more Republicans than Democrats have voted early in Florida, as of Sunday afternoon, according to state statistics. Ron DeSantis, the Republican candidate for governor, thinks this bodes well for him. "I'd rather be me than him," he said of his Democratic opponent, Andrew Gillum. Speaking to reporters in South Daytona, Florida, he cited a huge reservoir of dedicated Election Day voters for Republicans as well. Image: Mr. Gillum sees things differently, telling reporters in Miami that he was not at all concerned. The hard part is a look at Democrat versus Republican leaves over 800,000 of independents and no party affiliates, he said. We believe we're leading in that category, and we also don't believe that all Republicans who voted will be voting for Mr. DeSantis. We think we'll get our fair share of it. Democrats on Bob Hugin's block. Tom Malinowski is the Democratic candidate running against Representative Leonard Lance in New Jersey's 7th Congressional District. But his campaign volunteers are creating headaches for Bob Hugin, the Republican candidate for Senate. Image one of Mr. Malinowski's volunteer organizers, Lacey Ajowski, lives on the same block as Mr. Hugin in Summit, New Jersey, on both days this weekend. Her house served as the headquarters for canvassing efforts for Mr. Malinowski in the town. Hundreds of people streamed across her lawn and then out into the neighborhood in support of Mr. Malinowski. On Saturday, the turnout was so overwhelming that the police temporarily shut down the block. Mr. Malinowski shared the news with Mr. Hugin's opponent, Senator Bob Menendez, at a Union County Get Out the Vote breakfast on Sunday morning, noting, "Senator Menendez will like this story. We had 500 people come to one house to canvass," Mr. Malinowski said. "It shut down the block. Here's the fun part, it was Bob Hugin's block." Mr. Malinowski had an 8-point lead over Mr. Lance in the Times Upshot/Siena poll that concluded October 31st. Thanks for reading the tip sheet. Have you checked out On Politics with Lisa Lehrer, our evening newsletter? Subscribe here to get it delivered to your inbox.